Welcome, everybody. Today, we have the privilege of learning about an organization that's aiming to empower change in the way we work, in the way work is done using its leading-edge robotics platform. Universal Robots introduced the world's first commercially viable collaborative robot, or Cobot, in 2008, and has since developed a product portfolio that includes the UR3E, the UR5E, the UR10E, and more, all reflecting a range of reaches and payloads. Each model is supported by a wide selection of end effectors, software, accessories, and application kits in the UR Plus ecosystem. This allows the cobots to be used across a wide range of industries and means that they can be redeployed across diverse tasks. Headquartered in Denmark with offices globally, Universal Robots is part of Teradyne Inc. To date, Universal Robots has installed over 50,000 cobots worldwide. I'm joined today by Israel Nunez-Santiago, a beta program manager from Universal Robots. Welcome, Israel.
Hey, Austin. First off, I'd like to thank Austin and Maria for having me today. So I'm excited to kind of get into the details on Universal Robots and our beta program.
Us too. We really appreciate you joining us. I'm sure everybody else is excited to hear from you as well. So why don't we start with having you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Universal Robots?
Yeah. So I've been with Universal Robots now about 5 years. So my role's changed a bit in that time. But what I do now is I manage our beta program. So that includes kind of coordinating with our product teams, testing on pre-released hardware and software products. So with our industrial cobot arms, we have a different kind of users for our products that range from what we call certified system integrators that help integrate the solutions on manufacturing floors. We have original equipment manufacturers that use our robot as a piece of a product that they themselves sell to different manufacturing companies. And then we have our distribution partners. We sell through a distribution network. So they're constantly helping customers also do light integrations with the robot. Then we just have end users that are looking to implement these robots on their manufacturing floor. So kind of help coordinate the different users of our systems, get their feedback on products in the pre-release stage to make an impact on our kind of product roadmap and validate some of our product decisions.
Awesome. That's quite the scope of sort of your role there. I'm sort of eager to get into the meat of this. So let's start by again talking about your overall testing program at Universal Robots. Maybe we focus kind of first on how on getting your program started, and what kind of challenges and things like that came along with that activity.
Yeah, you got to be careful because there's program, project, and there's product. But that's a great question. So part of my time at Universal Robots, I worked in what we call our UR Plus team. So another user group we have are developers that develop on our system. They'll make plugins and additional software modifications on the system in order to be more compatible with whatever is getting used on the robot arm. So the robot arm itself is nice, but it usually always has a tool attached. So you're talking about welders, screwdrivers, it could be a gripper, some tool that will be used in an automation process on a manufacturing floor. So in that role, it involved a lot of collaboration and coordination with these companies that are integrated into our robot, and not just one-off integrations, but looking to productize those integrations into our system in an off-the-shelf solution to help speed up that automation timeframe that a user would have on their manufacturing floor. So that program is scaled up over the years, and I think originally we saw the need to we would get a lot of feedback from this developer group. Their product roadmap was dependent on our robot, so they see a lot of benefit in developing on our system, knowing what's going on, staying up to date with changes on our product, adapting their roadmap to stay compatible with our systems. And as we grew, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but we have over 300, I think now over 400 certified products that integrate into our system. So that meant working with a large network of developers globally. And there's just, I think this team started pretty small, just a couple engineers, and now scaled up. We have a global team kind of coordinating the feedback with these, and we saw there was a need to scale and keep our partner network kind of updated with what's going on, and make sure that we were able to kind of capture all of that feedback that we were getting out in the field.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like it's just the scope of that, like we were already talking about, huge ecosystem, lots of different moving pieces, lots of different players. What about this sort of this challenge, right? Customer testing and things like that. What made you eager to take on that opportunity to sort of help push for more focus in this area?
Yeah. I think it's a cool story actually, because at the time we had a product leader from a previous company. I think also one of your customers, iRobot. So he had mentioned they had used used the Centercode platform in his previous role, and kind of turned a couple of our colleagues here in the product team onto Centercode. We got a few demos, and I just remember immediately seeing that kind of the features and the tools you guys have, and it just really was a centralized way. I guess that's why maybe you picked the name Centercode, but a centralized way to get that feedback in one spot. But also now we have a global partner network, so it would be hard to coordinate between different regions and make sure even just internally we were capturing that feedback and making sure we weren't just listening to the feedback, but we were also tracking and also had the ability to actually execute on this feedback. And that's what I liked, is the tool set to allow us to kind of just that visibility so that we knew what to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned the sort of centralized aspect of the platform, and especially how beneficial that can be at a company. And like we were just talking about, with an ecosystem that big, and with all the different players, and even internally with all the different products, having that central place for everything, all of your testing sort of data and community and all that kind of stuff, is huge, right? I mean, avoiding data silos and things like that. It sounds like, an exciting challenge to take on for sure.
Oh yeah, it was. Wasn't an easy challenge, but I think it was one worth pursuing.
Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that then. Can we maybe get into some of the sort of week-to-week, day-to-day operations of your program? I think a lot of the attendees especially would be especially interested to hear your perspective, since you guys are squarely in the B2B space.
Yeah, and I think we had chatted in the past, and may be good to bring up. It's not like a one size fits all. So it's kind of been interesting as we started the program. Centercode's got a lot of great resources, and I remember when in the early stages as well, when we were figuring out, okay, how are we going to onboard beta testers? How are we going to choose the correct beta testers for the products? How are we even going to manage a beta test? It was great to kind of use those resources. And I was looking for resources as well when I was in that stage. And there's a lot of scattered resources that are kind of product management courses, may have a little aspect of beta testing. You might find a couple like YouTube videos, like TED Talks on beta testing. So it was really cool. I'm happy to kind of discuss on some of these if it'll help any other people implementing a beta program.
Really love that.
But I think the biggest challenge initially was just figuring out like at a high level kind of what we needed, what teams internally we needed to coordinate the start of a beta test. So we had a few initial test runs that were a little smaller scale. We were just kind of piloting it, seeing how it would go. And I think as as you know, we went through some of those planning stages. Some questions came up, and it's like, oh, I guess we also have to talk with our service team. Oh, we also have to talk with UX, or oh, we also have to talk with our product management team. Now, this will vary a lot by company. So it was kind of like figuring out what stakeholders were going to be vital to the process, and as we scaled up, kind of bringing them in on board and kind of showing the value of the program.
Absolutely. So can you talk a little bit about kind of the types of testing you're doing? Are you doing any kind of alphas or betas or continuous testing, like delta testing? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, the answer is yes, all of the above. We've got some beta test and alpha test on some releases coming up. So from the software and hardware perspective, but we also have our operating systems, actually our longest standing product, since 2008, the first Cobot, just continuously getting updates, not at a set cadence, but they'll be continually improving, adding new features, fixing bugs. So that one was important, especially with my background working with our developer network. Is it important to get feedback because a lot of these partner companies develop on our system, so they were expecting to know what was coming out. They wanted to be able to give feedback if there's some missing functionality. So was the kind of that continuous testing aspect of it really caught my eye initially as well, because just a lot of our system is dependent on our operating system.
Right, and that's a great point that you make there. That so many things are interconnected these days, especially on your side, especially for the robots and the software that makes them function. Right, it's constantly having to introduce updates because other people are introducing updates and so on and so forth, and just the cycle continues. Right.
Yeah, and I will add that's a good point you bring up about the everything's interconnected. I think that because we did some beta testing in the past as well, but it always was part of a different function. So either a product manager would run it on the side to get feedback, or someone on the UX team would run it, or someone from XYZ team would also run beta. And I think because things are so interconnected, then it is kind of nice to take a step back and kind of see where some coordination can be made on the testing side. And I think that really adds a lot of value to the testers as well, because they see a kind of like a unified, continuous kind of test that they're going. They don't see the how we break it down maybe internally. And I think that makes the test run smoothly. Now, do we do that 100% correct? I don't know that answer, but I know that's something that we're continuously trying to improve on as well.
Absolutely, continuous improvement is the hallmark of Delta, as well as general life, I guess. Right.
Sure.
You mentioned planning earlier, and kind of we've also kind of been talking about this collaborative process with other teams. Can you talk a little bit more about how your team does the planning process, how you involve other teams, and things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We saw the need pretty early on to kind of collaborate on just getting information on, okay, what do we want to test? And for example, the operating system could have some features that are specific to a certain application or a certain kind of functionality that a sub team in that operating system team is doing. So it was important to kind of set up starting with the big picture in mind. What's the goal of this beta test? What are we trying to validate? And then kind of working backwards and making sure we involved all the teams, because we were going to run the beta, and kind of from my point of view, we're going to run this beta as best we can anyway. So let's maximize kind of that engagement we're asking from the testers. So I think that planning is key, and it was just a lot of trial and error at first. And I think as we've got a few tests under our belt and communicated on that feedback, then more people would start reaching out and say, hey, I also want to, curious about how XYZ feature is doing. And then that kind of helps us also kind of build out that planning and kind of how that process will look like.
Absolutely, yeah. The collaboration is key for these project plans, especially when it comes to beta. I mean, you mentioned we were just talking about how everything's interconnected, so making sure you have all of these teams and their buy-in, as well as their involvement in the planning process. Speaking along those lines, how has the sort of Centercode platform helped you plan for your tests?
Yeah. So I don't know, kind of two ways, I would say, on the services side and also on the platform side. So initially, it was really helpful to kind of just pick the brain on your team. Just you guys have ran a lot of beta tests. You run beta tests for other companies, so I know we weren't inventing the wheel, so we were or we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So it was kind of seeing what tools you guys had available to kind of coordinate or help us kind of go down the right direction at least. So it started off pretty manual, where we had some of your project plans, and nothing's ever 100% cookie cutter the same way, but we kind of tailored it to our company structure and had the way we work, and we were able to kind of start with that. Word doc, taking notes, Excel sheets, trying to, a lot of Teams calls, a lot of Zoom, whatever webinar or whatever web facilities you have. But now, also on the software side, now that more people are getting into the system, are on board, kind of know the process for beta testing, they also have visibility and access to the platform. So you have those tools to do test planning right in the system. So everybody knows, okay, at what stage we're going to start onboarding, at what stage are we going to start active testing. And in that, maybe we have 2 surveys going out at different periods of the test. So it kind of reduces the need for those emails and those chats on, okay, what's going on, who's doing what, because we all sit down, we agree on a course of action, and it's kind of just built into the platform. So if there's any questions, then everyone's free to go in, see what's going on, and kind of and because there are so many different teams, some people may want to know different information at different stages of the test. So it makes our job easier running a beta test, having those tools for people to just be able to view.
Awesome. Yeah, glad to hear it. That's exciting to hear. We've talked a lot about testing and things like that. We haven't really talked a lot about testers yet. So can we maybe talk about sort of your testers, who your testers are, and any sort of learning experiences or best practices that you have to kind of share with the group as far as identifying and onboarding testers, especially at the B2B level?
Yeah, that's interesting, and I like to think we're unique, but you may have other customers that do B2B. So it was pretty interesting because of the different type of testers we have. So depending on what we're looking to validate, it could go from an end user that's just programming on our graphical user interface. So it's pretty simple to use interface, or it could be one of our developers that is going on in the back end and actually creating widgets on our system. So it varied. There's a need to build a robust database of testers, and that was a little difficult because some lessons learned actually from our initial run at beta testing, when we're doing it manually through email, was tester engagement. And it was important to communicate to the testers, let them know what's going on so that they have time, because they're running their own business, or they're really busy doing their thing. So we want to make sure there's visibility onto what's coming out. And also the onboarding was interesting because we are B2B. We usually have regional representation or account managers or somebody in the company that is working pretty closely to these customers, or working with somebody that is working closely with this customer. So it was also interesting to kind of involve them in the onboarding, or asking them if they had suggestions, and kind of some tips that kind of improved on our onboarding, like conversion, was being more personal with that and saying like an email template, maybe instead of just sending an invite for testing, what we would do is say, hey, so-and-so from the company or your Universal Robots rep recommended you for this voluntary program. This is what it is. If you see any benefit from that, then you're welcome to join. But if you join, we are looking to like capture feedback and start a dialogue with you. So it was kind of that personal touch, which is not very scalable. So it involved it involved also coordinating with a lot of our regional teams, making sure everybody was on board.
Sure. No, that's great. I really appreciate you sharing those things. One of the things you mentioned there, as far as telling people that a certain person within the company recommended them to be part of the test, and true or not, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, right? Everybody likes to feel special. Everybody likes to feel like they're the ones that the company wants to get feedback from and things like that. So I think it's a great point that you bring up as far as B2B especially. You don't really think about the sort of personal side, right? Everything's very professional and supposed to be I don't want to say uptight, but very very professional and direct. Where you kind of introduce that personal touch and it's a little bit different, right? It's a little bit of an unusual thing. So it's a great point.
Yeah, and that's funny you bring that up too, because for me, being not in the day-to-day on the product team and not in the day-to-day working with the customers, it was kind of a little frustrating. You see like the product team really wants feedback and the customers really want to give feedback, but there's there's a bridge you gotta build in order to kind of funnel that and make that relationship work. And that personal touch definitely helps. So I would say that need was there, but it was hard to communicate with somebody they didn't know. So it was nice to have the tools in place to be able to do that and kind of just help our teams in general.
That's another great point you make there too, the element of recognizability, right? If they know who their Universal Robots rep is, if you're reaching out to them with their name, name dropped in the email, they're more likely to respond, more likely to be engaged and kind of, not think it's spam or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. That's great. I appreciate you sharing that. We've talked about testers and things like that. The point of testers, as we've been talking about, is to get feedback. So, can we talk a little bit about the types of feedback that you and the team are seeking on your tests? Like, what are the kinds of feedback that makes an impact, internally with the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. Being that we work with various different product teams, and I hate to say it, but it depends.
Everything does.
Exactly. It'll depend on the maturity of the product we're testing. So like the alpha feedback is going to vary different than our beta feedback, and our delta feedback for our continuous testing on our operating system is going to vary than all of those. But we're mainly looking to capture pretty much anything on the pre-release spectrum. So that includes bugs, feature requests, praise. If something resonates with a tester that they really enjoyed this feature or they've been waiting for a while to get it, we want to hear that too. Which I think in the past, maybe the local rep would hear it, but it may not always trickle down to our product team. So it was really nice to kind of capture that as well, because they may only start to hear the bad things, like, oh, we got to fix this, we got to fix that. So we're pretty much open to any feedback. And on some of those early projects, we'll also we'll use Centercode as the testing database, but we'll still do kind of those manual interviews, because it's not yet. It's maybe just some wireframes or some discussions on the roadmap. In that case, we still want their initial feedback, but there might not be like a tangible test to run. So you name it, but the big ones are bugs, feature requests, praise. And then we also, pretty valuable, just the questions that get asked. If they don't know how to test, they're like, oh, easy, just run this test. We kind of also see what content we may be missing on the product side to make it easier to use.
Yeah, that makes sense. You had mentioned interviews, and I kind of perked up in there as far as one thing I wanted to mention here is it's so important to tailor sort of how you are going to get that feedback to your audience and to the maturity of the product, like you were already talking about. Interviews, they're not scalable, right? So they're very challenging to sort of fit into this sort of one to many delta beta, relationship and interaction. But we kind of go back to tailoring, like we were talking about earlier. You have to tailor everything to what you're looking to achieve, what you're, to your point, not everything is a one size fits all. So it's good. And praise, another thing that I wanted to sort of touch on there too, is praise being something that we brought in because, to your point, the engineers were just hearing the negative stuff. They were just hearing what's wrong, what's broken, what can be better, not, hey, this is working really great, and we really appreciate the thought you put in this particular feature. So I'm glad to hear that praise is definitely working for you guys at Universal Robots.
Yeah. I am as well.
One of the things that we've kind of been talking about as far as testers and feedback goes, we ran a survey last year. I think around 50% of the respondents mentioned having experiencing difficulties with engagement and getting your testers engaged and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about how you and the team are using Centercode to sort of engage with your partner testers and capture their opinions on the products that are in test?
Yeah, that was a concern initially as well. Because we started with our pilot group where partners and testers that we were already really closely collaborating with, so that relationship was there. If it wasn't with me or my team, it was somebody that we knew pretty well. So the engagements were really high. We were getting 80-90% engagement rates on surveys, and everyone was logging in. And a concern was, as we scale this to include different tester demographics and different regions as well, will we be able to maintain high engagement? And I think there's certain things that we learned that help with that. It would vary a lot by company, but one thing I mentioned was that that email, saying that there's someone in the company that recommended you for this, that they do talk to regularly. But in the cases where we want to onboard some companies that don't have that, or maybe we really value their feedback because they're a target user, key tester for this feature or product, then we would do more of the kind of manual onboarding alongside the reps in that Universal Robot that they do know, and just say, hey, it didn't have to be crazy, but just put a name to the face and say, this is what we're trying to do. Because usually because it is B2B, it takes some commitment on their end, resources, time. And then another big one was just the cadence of communication, letting them know there's a start date and there's an end date. And this is what we're looking for. This is what we're asking, and just making it super easy so that they don't hit any kind of friction points through that testing journey. I think that's really key. And that was a big lessons learned for how we ran beta testing in the past as well, is being a little more clear on a time frame and just keeping up that communication. And sometimes things change, and if they do, letting the testers know as well. So I think that helps for sure. I don't have the silver bullet to that, so I'm also open for suggestions, Austin.
Absolutely, man. You kind of talked about friction there, and I wanted to jump on that one as far as it seems so simple, but removing the friction as much as you can to give people the opportunity to provide you feedback is sort of a key step that I think a lot of people sort of forget. But there's this sort of balance that you need to strike with making it too easy to report feedback. Then you kind of get junk. You get stuff that isn't necessarily great feedback. But if you give them just the right amount of friction, you get the people who are invested, who are engaged, who are interested and excited, that push through that little bit of friction to give you really good feedback. So that, I thought that was a really interesting thing you picked up on there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, we've talked a lot about I keep bringing this up. We've talked a lot about everything else, but results and reporting and things like that. So let's jump in there so that we make sure we have some time for that. Can we start talking about kind of what KPIs the team at Universal Robots is looking at to know that you guys are successful?
Yeah, and it's actually something that's on top of mind right now. So I could have taken the whole, time and just talked about reporting and KPIs, but I think it's going to be evolving always as the program matures and as teams grow. And but we are kind of tracking that engagement in the form of like logins, downloads, survey, response rates, onboarding conversion rates. So we want to see what works and what doesn't work. Early on, we weren't sending those tailored emails. So we started using that later on in the program. And we, it's nice to go back and see that data from the first test to now and see what works, what doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So I think there's some basic things that we want to pull from Centercode's data that's accessible. Is just seeing how are the testers using the system. So that's always good for me on the running the beta program side, just to make sure we are creating value for those testers and that they're engaging with us. And so that's big. And then also reporting. So through beta testing, our goal is also, you could look at like our product management team as a kind of like the beta programs customer, where we're hoping to get them feedback. So it's also figuring out what metrics are important to our different product teams. So we've got, bugs, feature requests that helps them prioritize and lets them know what is resonating, what isn't resonating, what some of those pain points are with our testers. But also communicating that has been kind of a interesting challenge. Is we get all this data from Centercode, but also different people interpret it in different ways. So it's actually been taking a focus recently on ways to better communicate that data in an easy to digest form. So we've been doing report outs at the end of each beta test, sending those to the product managers, and it's going well. And I think with that, kind of want to throw it back on you, Austin, is what are some of your tips also? Because I think with reporting is tricky because you don't always, deliver that. It's not like a presentation. So you also want to make sure you capture all the right data that would be relevant for their product organization.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sort of happy to jump in there, especially on the Centercode side and thinking down the platform and sort of letting the platform do the work for you. Centercode, with our most recent update, we had introduced these ideas of Delta KPIs, right? And the idea is to pull data from different areas of the project to generate a couple scores that can tell you, from a high level, are there things that you need to dive a little bit deeper into and find a little bit more information into? So things like Delta Health, right, which ends up being, how your project's doing, and we pull in information from what feedback has been submitted, where the feedback is submitted, what features the feedback relates to, activity completions. Are they completing what they're supposed to be doing? We bubble all that up into a score, and then we can tell you, your project is healthy, it's going well, or hey, you need to take a look at feature coverage, right? Testers aren't looking into this particular feature that you have as a focus today. So there's that one. Then there's Delta Success, which will tell you how well your product's doing in the project, and that bases its score off of a ratio of the issues versus the ideas versus the praise. So pulling those together. So again, you've got kind of activity and engagement. We have an area with that pulls in the feedback and the types of feedback that's coming in. And then we have test impact, which as you resolve issues and ideas in the platform throughout the period of time that you're testing and things like that, the impact starts to go up, and you can actually see a percentage of impact you're having on your test and on your product reported out on in a real-time basis as you're resolving these issues and things like that. But I say all that, excited about those, Delta KPIs. We go back to the time the tried and true answer of it depends. Depends on what you're looking to do.
I will add to that I mentioned it earlier, like the visibility of having multiple teams on our side accessing Centercode makes it really nice because sure, we do the report out at the end of the beta test, but sometimes, especially we'll have some that run a little longer, maybe a few months, maybe a few weeks. So maybe they want some to know what the status is at a certain time period between the beta testing. So it's nice to have those built-in KPI trackers and the data that you can pull and kind of generate your report so they can just refresh it and kind of see, okay, like sure, maybe this isn't like the complete picture yet, but they don't need the complete picture because it's still in progress. So it's kind of just to know kind of what's going on. And then I did also want to make a point on the onboarding. It's vital for me, making sure we can adapt the program to the needs of the organization, is to also know how some of these metrics are doing, to make adjustments. Like one thing that, as an example, like we have onboarding. We've recently started also reaching out we have a Universal Robots forum. So now you're going to even less of the personal like relationship with them. So doing maybe onboarding videos or some private webinars or something. So as we look through the conversion rates from this anonymous kind of forum to Centercode, we may need to, depending on what those metrics tell us, adjust our tactic for onboarding. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a great point of kind of keeping the pulse on where things are at. And especially as you make changes, like you just mentioned, that this sort of more anonymous element that's being introduced with the forum, and then sort of that transition over to Centercode, keeping an eye on that and seeing which levers you're pulling are having which effect, right, on the sort of total outcome. Yeah, definitely makes sense.
And
yeah, go ahead,
it definitely, like as an overall thing, it makes my job easy that our product organization is super open to feedback and kind of has that customer success in mind. So I think that organizational buy-in is huge also. So it's not kind of like I didn't like force the company to do beta testing. There's a need there for our product team to get feedback.
Right.
So that was really great.
That's good. You mentioned that there. The sort of getting the other teams involved. Like we've been talking about that quite a bit. What kinds of reports are you distributing internally? Like what kinds of things are you showing in these reports, and what is exciting for these other teams? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, a little bit. I could go into like an example. I think on the reports will be, just raw metrics from the website, Centercode. So like number of bugs, number of feature requests, and then segmenting those by groups affected on our side. I think what has resonated pretty well, at least with our product teams, were also the pervasiveness measured by how many other people are submitting similar issues, and also kind of also communicating like how a few of those could be related. So I think that has been interesting. I think when we first did the reporting, we weren't really sure what to include. So we start with, the tools you guys have available is, the number of bugs, number of feature requests, if they've been upvoted by the testers, or if similar feature requests have been entered or bugs have been entered. And then as we did more beta testing, then different product owners and different product teams were then asking, hey, when is this report coming out? So switch from me, showing them the reports to them asking for reports. And then that's where, that dialogue starts with, okay, well, what are you looking for in the report? And you can kind of tailor some of that data to make it easier to digest for them. So it's always it's complex because the features we do Also hence our name, Universal Robots, can be used in a variety of different industries and applications. So it's also interesting to see, okay, what is the severity of these issues or these feature requests? What can the impact be? Because it does impact different kind of use cases for our robots that we might not know. So just having that dialogue with the testers and collecting the feedback and try to segment it in a way that's easy to see. Okay, well, we got 10 requests about this, but actually if you look at it, it's also impacting, it could impact 10 different types of applications for the robot. So I think that's really cool to see.
Absolutely, yeah. Being able to apply that data across your various sectors that you guys are interested, or that you guys are engaged in.
Exactly.
Talk about sort of evolution there. I mean, you mentioned kind of going from this sort of very manual and immature is a very harsh word. I don't want to use that word, but not mature program, I should say. And you go from that to where everybody's kind of doing beta testing and delta testing their own ways to now you have sort of this centralized tool and program that you can distribute results out from. Great. I'm sure people were enjoying that and interested in the sort of data you were pushing out. But then now you have people asking you for these reports and depending on these reports, which is like going from nothing to that is huge, right? I mean, huge getting that buy-in internally.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a big part of that is Universal Robots has seen crazy amounts of growth, like over the last, 5+ years, like double-digit growth. So it's been, I think that's the natural progression is, you want feedback, but, there's not enough volume there for you to set up a program and get those tools in place. So it kind of started off in that way. And the value is definitely there because we see the requests coming in, as you mentioned. So I think, naturally we wanted to scale up and improve that process because there is now with probably close now to 60,000 robot installations, a huge volume of users out there that are more than happy to give feedback. So now it comes to a point where even if you wanted to run beta how we manually, it probably would not be feasible.
Yeah, scaling is not easy with Excel and email. That's definitely for sure.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we have some time for questions. So I'll ask you, is there anything else that you want to mention to the audience or anything like that?
Yeah, I think we covered most of it. Feel free to ask any questions, but yeah, Centercode's the best. You should use that.
Well, thank you, Israel. I really appreciate you coming on to talk with us today. It's enjoyable as always. I know we do this pretty regularly. But yeah, really a huge thanks to you and Universal Robots, and excited about your program, and we're all rooting for you guys to be successful. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. So I'm going to hand it over to Maria so we can get on to the question and answer section.
Thank you very much, Austin. All right, so I've been collecting questions throughout. Let's just tab over to the next slide. We have a little bit before we get to our questions and answers. So firstly, I wanted to give a plug out to this piece of content that we have on our library right now. If you want to check out and learn how to accurately predict your product success before launch, please check out the Future of Product Management Metrics. It's going to show you how. As I mentioned, it's available for download on our website at centercode.com/resources. In addition to that, if you would like to engage with us, if you are interested in seeing the platform, please feel free to schedule a free demo. And again, I do have one more link for centercode.com/resources. We've got so many pieces of content out here to help you with your next test. That being said, also, if you want to check out Universal Robots and see what their cobots are doing around the world, please hit up universalrobots.com. All right, so now let's get into our Q&A portion. And additionally, for anybody who might have been holding their questions throughout the webinar, please just send them to me using the Q&A portion of the Zoom toolbar. So first question that I have is, do you have anything to encourage a collaborative or team feeling amongst the internal teams that are involved in continuous testing?
Yeah. So to understand that question is just that to encourage our internal teams to kind of collaborate when in the purposes of like maybe planning or setting up a beta test. Is that?
Yeah. So I guess this is in the capacity of internal teams. So like dog fooding. So like
Okay.
I know companies will sometimes use dog fooding to kind of make a creative like environment for that and get everybody like hyped up because
Yep.
they're helping. So I think that's where that question is coming from. If it's not, just please send me a message and I'll get that clarification out.
Okay. No, that's a great question because as we scaled our partner network, we also scaled our internal team. So it was difficult getting kind of the news of product features updates out to all our field support applications engineers, so including them also in I guess early alpha, or what you would call dog food testing, was vital. Also just having everybody know what's going on, but also there's valuable information in our internal team as well, because they use our system also every day. It may not be in a full-time manufacturing floor setup, but they'll do demos, they'll help with integrations, been doing it for years. So they also had a lot of valuable input to bring into our product teams. So actually, we started with dog food testing and our close partners when we began the program. So I think that's a super vital part of it as well, is just also you get more awareness on that we are running beta testing, and also it helps with collaboration because everyone feels like they have a part in the product as well.
Right. Thank you for that question. I'm going to jump to another question that kind of, I think, actually ties in with your explanation here. Question asks, when you were starting your program, did you have anyone outside of your department who you teamed up with to get their buy-in or approval? Outside of your team, who first saw value in your program?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it helped that through my role prior to beta program manager, worked with a lot of our partners, and in that capacity, we already were collaborating a lot with different groups to get feedback in. So like the product team, we have a UX team, marketing as well. We'd work with sales. So knowing kind of what stakeholders we needed was key, and also it kind of then grew from there. So we have some contacts in different organizations, so I know sometimes could be hard depending on the size of the company, but I think reaching out to different groups and getting them involved in the planning process, like, hey, this is what we're trying to do. The end goal is make great products for our customers. So I think that's what we all want. So let's figure out, how we can work together to accomplish some of these tasks.
Thank you. All right, I am getting questions coming in. Thank you so much for sending them my way. So I'm going to move on to next question here. What is a good way to gauge success of a program? I'm starting up a program at my company, blank slate. Well, that sounds exciting. And I want to demonstrate its effectiveness as we go from one test to test number 2 and onwards.
Yeah, I think that's a great one, and I'm constantly struggling with that one. But I think it's nice to show kind of tester engagement, or also size of the testing base. So one thing that is kind of, now that we've rolled out the program, passed a few pilot tests, and we've ran a few beta tests ourselves, is now there's a lot of requests from our teams like, hey, so-and-so also wants to be part of the beta. And but I think to do that, it's important to track how your platform is being used, the feedback you're getting from that from start to finish, like an end-to-end process. You're generating feedback, but you also want to make sure on the tail end that where is that feedback going? Is it getting executed? Not? If not, how can you improve that? So I think showing that, from tester into product development, there's a workflow there that can be replicated and scaled. So there's value there. It doesn't have to be, huge at first. And then once you can kind of validate, okay, this works, we're getting feedback from testers and it's good feedback because our teams are executing on it. Then you can go back and say, well, now we're going to try to scale this up and see if that's still the case. If not, what do we need to adjust, kind of thing.
Thank you for that answer. Okay, next question here. During a beta test, have you ever run into any bugs or suggestions that totally surprised your team? Something that nobody has considered but ended up providing enormous value?
Yeah, I would say at least every beta test. So there's always things. I think, our quality teams are great and they do a really good job of capturing a lot of issues in-house, but there's so many uses of our robots and edge cases that is just impossible to capture everything. And I think there's been a few cases where have led to improvements in our automated testing. So that was really good. Also, back to the previous question is, to highlight this is how we're also getting better process-wise from the feedback we're getting. I think there are always surprises, and I think that because of especially on less mature products, it's important to set that expectations with the testers. Like sometimes because I work with beta testing all the time, I forget that, and you just let them know that issues are expected at this stage. We're trying to validate, some of these features. So we'll usually get, a few really good edge cases that we didn't consider. So I think that's been great also. And luckily our team's great on, capturing that feedback and executing on it. So it's also really nice for me to highlight in a report whenever those pop up.
Thank you. Thank you for that question as well. I'm going to give a few more moments for anybody, if they have any questions that they would like to submit, keep the lines open, so to speak. But if we don't have any other questions right now, we'll just close out the webinar. Austin, actually, if you can flip over to the next slide here, I wanted to make sure that this slide got seen, because if you do have any questions following the webinar that come to your mind, please definitely reach out to Israel and Austin through the methods provided. You can connect with them there. With that being said, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today on how Universal Robots is using Delta testing to shape the future of robotics. Wish you all a very great day.
Thanks, everybody.